Senator Gary Peters was just finishing up his questions as I walked in front of the camera here, and he asked Zuckerberg something I thought was really interesting. He asked if the company uses the microphone on your cell phone to listen to your conversations. China says it's slashing tariffs on certain vehicles from 25% down to 15% starting July 1st. Rob Portman is one of the key Republicans pushing this tax reform bill. He says it will benefit the middle class and it will keep companies from offshoring jobs. That's an issue he and Senator Brown just fundamentally disagree on. They pointed to commercial planes. They said those have largely been automated for quite some time, but there's still a pilot in the cockpit. They said they expect that to be the same as self-driving cars and trucks develop. The tech industry may see things a little differently.
The Senate votes tonight. The House votes again with those changes tomorrow, and then it should be on the president's desk tomorrow if all goes as planned. A lot of the staffers I'm talking to are saying this is really no big deal. In their words, they're saying it's no biggie, that it won't derail tax reform by any means, but it'll just slow it down a bit.
The executives had a lot to talk about with the president, everything ranging from fuel efficiency standards to trade. Critics say the FCC is giving too much power to telecom companies like AT&T and Verizon because now those companies will be able to slow or block access to certain websites and charge more for better quality. While he's not confident in Congress, Kasich says he's more optimistic about the private sector. The Cummins CEO Tom Linebarger was in D.C. today for a panel discussion on trade. We talked before that panel, and he told me he is worried about the consequences of the president's tariffs on steel and aluminum. Those tariffs are set to go into effect on Friday, and Linebarger said that could make Cummins less competitive.
One of Indiana's largest companies is warning a trade war could lead to job losses in the state.
Trade is what created their job in the first place.
CEO Tom Linebarger argues the president's attempt to prop up America's steel and aluminum industries will drive up costs for manufacturers like Cummins.
My concern is that for every job we add in the steel industry, we may cost 18 jobs in companies like Cummins that use steel.
President Trump says the aluminum and steel tariffs aimed at countries like China will level the playing field for American metal producers by raising the price of cheap imports.
I think in the end, we're going to have a lot of great jobs. We're going to have a lot of great companies.
But Linebarger says global trade, specifically trade with China, is critical to his company's success.
We need the 95% of customers that are outside the U.S. As we build plants in the U.S. and R&D centers in the U.S., we need to be able to sell abroad.
If other countries slap tariffs on U.S.-made goods, Linebarger says Cummins will be far less competitive in the global market. He points to the plant in Seymour, Indiana, that just opened in 2015.
We're going to export 70% of those engines. So without trade, that plant can't afford to be there. So we need trade for those jobs to be in Seymour, Indiana.
Linebarger says instead of tariffs, the Trump administration should work with our allies on a comprehensive strategy with measured steps to deal with China.
Linebarger says he's going to keep fighting tariffs and spreading his message that international trade creates American jobs. He says China and the U.S. can both win if they work together to come up with a long-term strategy. He told me he knows that's difficult, that's complicated, but he says it's doable for the world's largest economies. Live in Washington, I'm Jessica Smith, 24-hour News 8.
Jessica, before we let you go, did Linebarger talk about the NAFTA negotiations and how that impacts his business?
He did bring up NAFTA. He said NAFTA and his company's relationship with China are the two most important factors to Cummins' success. You'll remember we talked to Linebarger last year when he was here on Capitol Hill testifying about the importance of NAFTA. He said today he feels like negotiations are progressing and he really hopes the three countries can come together and modernize NAFTA but keep the agreement in place.
What I have proposed is...
FCC Chairman Ajit Pai says foreign governments could attack the U.S. communications network.
Ultimately, what's at stake is the integrity of the security of our networks itself.
That's why Pai wants to ban carriers and broadband providers from using federal money to buy equipment from countries that present a national security risk. Pai says the U.S. makes itself vulnerable if it builds its network with technology developed by bad actors.
Hidden backdoors being created in networks that would allow foreign entities to spy on Americans, to infiltrate networks by injecting viruses.
Pai's proposal does not name specific countries or companies, but he says that will be a part of the debate.
We want to make sure that we at the FCC are wise stewards of federal dollars.
But some worry the restrictions would make it harder to expand broadband access. Critics say fewer suppliers will lead to higher cost of goods. In a statement, the Rural Wireless Association says the proposal would shut down broadband services and deter future deployment in many parts of rural America. But Senator Sherrod Brown doesn't buy that.
U.S. companies are plenty capable of expanding rural broadband. When American tax dollars are involved, you should buy American.
Pai said he doesn't believe new rules will hurt broadband expansion either.
The national security of the United States is an overriding priority.
On Tuesday, the FCC commissioners are set to vote to begin debate and open public comment on the proposal. Reporting in Washington, Jessica Smith, Local 5 News.
Free checking has gone away. You know, it's harder to get whether it's a mortgage or a car loan and those kinds of things.
Michigan Congressman Bill Huizenga wants to change all that. He says he's 100% behind the bill that rolls back some of the so-called Dodd-Frank regulations, a set of laws passed after the 2008 financial crisis.
That have hit small community banks and credit unions that were never the intended target.
If the president signs the bill, some community banks and mid-sized banks will no longer be under the toughest level of federal oversight. Supporters say it will make it easier for people to get a mortgage or a small business loan. But Senator Sherrod Brown says lawmakers must have amnesia.
Wall Street greed almost wiped out our economy. It cost millions of jobs. It cost millions of people to lose their homes.
The bill has support from both parties. Democratic Senator Joe Donnelly says the regulations on big banks whose failures could impact the entire economy are still in place. This bill focuses on smaller banks.
It makes it so it's simpler for them to operate, and it still makes sure we're as safe and stable as ever, so it's a win-win.
But Brown says most banks don't need the help.
Profits are up 27% at some of their all-time highs. They got a big tax cut. We're going to give them more.
The president says he'll sign the bill into law, and House Republicans say they're already working on a phase 2 to ease even more regulations. In Washington, I'm Jessica Smith.